All right, hey everyone. We're going deep on the CCST networking exam today. You've been prepping for this, and you sent us some practice questions you're using. Looks like some pretty fundamental networking concepts here, but I'm telling you, some of these could trip up even someone who's been doing this for a while.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's always good to go back and make sure you really understand the fundamentals,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to networking, since those are kind of like the foundation of everything else you'll be learning.
Okay, so the first one here jumps right into security. Which protocol is used to securely access the CLI of a switch over a network? The options are HTTP, SSH, Telnet, and FTP. Hmm. Security. That's always a huge topic.
It really is, yeah. And this question shows exactly why. Think about, say, back in 2017 when there was that huge ransomware attack called WannaCry. One of the ways it spread so fast was by taking advantage of devices that were using that insecure Telnet protocol for remote
Yeah.
access. So that's why SSH, or Secure Shell, is really the only acceptable answer. It makes like an encrypted connection so nobody can snoop on what you're doing or get into your system.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember hearing about WannaCry. So is it like using Telnet is basically like leaving your front door wide open, and SSH is like having like a solid lock and an alarm system?
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it. And it shows why SSH is the best way to go for managing things remotely. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about getting into really important network devices, like the heart of any organization these days, right? You just
Right.
you can't take security lightly.
Got it. Secure access is super important. Okay, next question. This one asks, which of the following fields are present in a UDP header? And the options are sequence number, destination port, acknowledgement number, and window size. Okay, I'm already feeling a little lost.
Don't worry, it's all about knowing the difference between TCP and UDP. So
Yeah.
TCP is like, a super organized package delivery service. Everything has to arrive in perfect condition
Yeah.
and in the right order. But UDP is more like sending a postcard. You're not keeping track of every single step along the way, just making sure it gets to the right place.
So TCP is for when you need to be absolutely sure something gets delivered, like downloading a really important document. And UDP is better for things like streaming a live video, where if a couple packets get lost, it won't totally ruin the experience.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And because UDP is all about being fast and efficient, it doesn't need all those extra fields for tracking and acknowledging stuff.
Yeah.
The only really crucial thing in a UDP header is the destination port, which tells the receiving device where the data is supposed to go.
That makes sense. Like when you're addressing a letter, you only put the essential info to get it where it needs to be. Okay, question 3 takes us into the world of latency. What impact does high latency have on network performance? I think we've all felt this one. Who hasn't had that frustrating lag in a video call or an online game right now?
Oh yeah, totally. Latency can really mess things up. It's that
Um,
delay between when you do something and when you see the result. And it's especially noticeable in things that need to happen in real time. Like, imagine a surgeon doing a remote surgery with a ton of latency. Every little movement would be delayed, and that would be super dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
And while there are lots of reasons why you might have high latency, like the distance, how much traffic there is on the network, or even old equipment, the result's always the same. Your data is going to be delayed.
Yikes. Okay, so it's not just about annoying lag in our games. It can really have serious real-world consequences.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone on the other side of the world, but there's a 5-second delay. It just doesn't work.
Definitely not. Okay, question 4 wants to know about the function of the ICMP protocol. And the choices are packet encryption, address resolution, network diagnostics and error reporting, and data transmission reliability.
Hmm. ICMP sounds a little mysterious, to be honest. It might sound like that, but ICMP is actually your best friend when it comes to fixing network problems.
Oh,
Like, think of it as the network's own, like, built-in diagnostic tool. It's not about actually moving data. It's more about sending messages that help figure out problems and tell you if something's wrong.
so if a data packet is like a car driving down the highway, then ICMP is like the traffic report, letting you know about accidents and road closures.
Exactly. And those tools you mentioned before, Ping and Traceroute, they use ICMP to do their thing. So Ping sends out a little ICMP echo request to see if it can reach a destination. And then Traceroute uses ICMP to map out the path your data takes to get where it's going.
Oh, wow. So ICMP is kind of like the unsung hero of network troubleshooting.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
If you can understand how ICMP works, it can be a huge help when your network's acting up.
All right, on to the last question in this set, and this one's a multi-select, so get ready. Here's the question. Which statements about bandwidth and network performance are true? And the options are Increased bandwidth can reduce network congestion. Low bandwidth may lead to higher latency. Throughput is always equal to bandwidth, and high latency can negatively impact throughput. Whoa, that's a lot to think about.
It is.
Hmm.
But this one really gets down to how all these different things work together to affect the overall performance of your network. So let's look at each one. Okay, option A, increased bandwidth can reduce network congestion.
Okay, I'm thinking about that highway analogy again. More lanes on the highway would mean less traffic, right? So more bandwidth would mean more space for data to move around freely.
Yeah, that's the idea. Increased bandwidth means more data can be transmitted at the same time, so you're less likely to have bottlenecks and delays.
Hmm.
It's kind of like upgrading from dial-up to, high-speed broadband. All of a sudden, you can do a lot more without everything flowing down.
Right, right. So more bandwidth is usually a good thing. What about option B? Low bandwidth may lead to higher latency. Does that fit with our highway analogy
Oh,
too?
yeah, definitely. Think about like a single-lane road trying to handle rush hour traffic. Cars would be backed up, moving really slowly, and it'd take forever to get anywhere. Low bandwidth creates that same kind of bottleneck for data, which means longer delays and slower response times.
Okay, makes sense. So options A and B are both true. Now, what about option C? Throughput is always equal to bandwidth. I feel like this one might be a little tricky.
Yeah, this is where things get a little more complicated. So bandwidth is the theoretical maximum speed, like the top speed of our car, right?
Right.
But throughput is the actual speed we're getting, which can be affected by all sorts of things, like the condition of the road, traffic, even limitations of the car itself.
So even if I have a gigabit internet connection, if the website I'm trying to get to is overloaded or there's something wrong with my Wi-Fi router, I'm not actually going to see those gigabit speeds.
Nope, not at all. Throughput is how much data is actually getting through each second in the real world. It can't be higher than the bandwidth, but it's usually lower because of all those real-world factors we talked about.
Got it. So option C is false. And finally, option D, high latency can negatively impact throughput. I'm going to guess this one's true, thinking about all the pain we felt with lag.
You got it. High latency means there are delays in how the data is being sent, which directly affects how fast that data can actually be transferred, which is throughput. It's like having a super fast car, but you keep hitting red lights. You might have the potential for speed, but you're not really getting anywhere quickly.
That's a good way to put it. So the correct answers for this multi-select question are A, B, and D. That was tough, but I think we broke it down pretty well.
I think so too. It's questions like this that really make you think about how all these concepts work together, which is really important.
Well said. It's been an awesome deep dive. Any last thoughts for our listeners before we sign off?
Just this. Networking's always changing, so be ready to change with it. Stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to experiment. The more you know about how networks work, the more you'll be able to do, both in your career and just in your everyday life in this digital world we live in.
I love it. So to all our listeners, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those networks running smoothly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of CCST networking. We'll catch you next time.